Hi, I'm Johnny West from Open Oil, and this is my application for a Shuttleworth Foundation Fellowship for 2016. We need some kind of global regulation of natural resources and the way they're produced, and my application is to create the open data framework which will support that regulation. Climate change policy, serious climate change policy when it happens, must strand fossil fuel assets. We can't even produce out all of the oil and coal that's already been discovered, let alone carry on looking for more. So whose assets get stranded and who gets to carry on producing? Not all fossil fuels are equal, commercially, developmentally, or even environmentally. Sometimes it's cheap to produce, sometimes expensive. It can power villages in Africa and put them on the electric grid, or McMansions in Texas. There can be lower or higher carbon emissions associated with the same amount of production. That's going to be a humongous battleground. China, the US, Europe, Saudi Arabia, Russia, India, Brazil, Africa, Exxon, Rio Tinto, Gazprom. We can't even begin to imagine how the deals will go down and how the geopolitics are going to work out, or what the best implementation options are going to be technically. The only thing we do know, if we're not in climate change denial, is that it has to happen somehow. And water and land use are not far behind climate change as planetary boundaries under extreme stress. Long term, these two will need global regulation. And that means the same deal for mining, which uses huge quantities of both, as for oil with climate change. Some kind of supranational regulation and allocation, perhaps even binding production quotas. Judged by conventional and lazy thinking, this appears to be radical and fanciful. But in fact, it's going to be the only way to maintain stability or sustainability, to use the development buzzword, in a fully interconnected world. Without it, resource wars will be more common in the future than they have been up until now. That's the case for global regulation. Where my project comes in is to build an open data framework which will support this new policy world. Just as there can't be a World Trade Organization without trade statistics and general frameworks for investment treaties, there can't be any global management of natural resources without the data and standards to support it. The fact is, if we woke up on December 12th, the day after the Paris Climate Change Summit, in a magical world where the political will to really tackle climate change had been solved and was finally there, we wouldn't have the tools to deliver it. That's the piece of the puzzle I aim to solve. The generous support I've received so far from the Shuttleworth Foundation has allowed me to fashion some primary building blocks. Using open data, we've put financial modelling into public domain. 2 billion people can now, for the first time, go to a map, type in their address and see whether they're living inside an oil block. We've proved you can map thousands of affiliates of one multinational group into one coherent structure. And we have, accidentally as it happens, created a model for a vertical search engine which surfaces everything extractives companies tell their investors in one place. Others are adopting our methods. Beneficial ownership as an issue used to be about catching dodgy African dictators and their sons. Now it's been extended to consider tax planning by multinationals. Modelling is now part of the transparency agenda. We've got more demand than we can cope with and credibility which stretches way beyond these small offices in Berlin. All of which makes it big picture time. We will add to and deepen the building blocks in the next year because they're proofs of concept in scale. Each one started separately, but they're already beginning to join up to form a coherent picture. So we will build the map to be global, train hundreds of people using online courses and address civil society capacity in that way, explore how we can bring local private sector law and accounting firms into the governance game by skilling them up in return for some commitment to open. We'll move into primary data acquisition, air sensors, community mapping, perhaps drones, which is exciting not just because of the gadgets, but because it can create information asymmetry in the other direction. Let governments and companies catch up with local communities for once. Just as important, though, is the idea of the open data framework itself and getting it out there. If I can get Naomi Klein to endorse it, Fox News to go ballistic on it, and an international institution or two to publish on it this year, it'll be on its way. That's what I'd like to do with the support of the Shuttleworth Foundation. Thanks very much.